Hello and welcome again to the Daily Bread Bible Study. We are looking at day 87 for Friday, March 27th, 2020, focusing on 1 Samuel 19 through 21. Today we get to talk about friends and enemies. We see that Jonathan gets caught up in the middle of this and tries to insert himself in the conflict between King David and King Saul. So Jonathan wants to mediate the issues. Jonathan loves his father, but also loves David as well. So Jonathan seeks to speak with King Saul and tries to persuade the leader of Israel from attacking David. In 1 Samuel 19, verse 6, Saul heeded the voice of Jonathan. Saul swore, "As the Lord lives, he shall not be put to death." So with that assurance, Jonathan visits his friend David and brings him back to the king's court. David then leads another successful effort against the Philistines. And again, another evil spirit from the Lord enters into King Saul, and he tries to kill David while the future king is playing the lyre. David goes home, and Saul sends word to have him killed. Saul's daughter, Michal, tells her husband, David, to flee and helps him escape. She even puts a figure in his bed and covers him up with some nice wool there and pretends that David is sick in bed. Now in exile, David goes to a person that he can trust. He visits the prophet Samuel. So David meets Samuel in Naioth of Ramah, and King Saul learns the two are together and sends messengers to capture David. In 1 Samuel 19:20, then Saul sends messengers to take David. And when they saw the company of the prophets in a frenzy, with Samuel standing in charge of them, the Spirit of God came upon the messengers of Saul, and they fell into a prophetic frenzy. A second and a third group are sent, and the same thing happens. A prophetic frenzy overtakes them. Saul finally goes himself. In verse 23 through 24, he went there towards Naioth of Ramah, and the Spirit of God came upon him. As he was going, he fell into a prophetic frenzy until he came to Naioth in Ramah. He too stripped off his clothes, and he fell into a frenzy before Samuel. He lay naked all the day and all that night. Therefore it is said, "Is Saul also among the prophets?" Now this story is a little strange, mainly because it feels kind of repetitious, and it kind of contradicts some of what we've heard before. We'll have to wrestle with the sections in 1 Samuel 10 where it says, "Therefore there became a proverb, is Saul also among the prophets?" This was at Saul's call story in 1 Samuel 10. And then the second part at Saul's rejection in 1 Samuel 15, verse 35 there. Samuel did not see Saul again until the day of his death. And so if Saul comes there and falls in a prophetic frenzy before Samuel, then we're not exactly sure why that might not be the case. Maybe Samuel's eyesight's gone and it just doesn't happen. And maybe this is another reason why it contributes to saying maybe Saul is one of the prophets. But you have to take into account those other two pieces of story here in 1 Samuel as well. Moving on to chapter 20, David is able to meet with Jonathan. And Jonathan says, "King Saul promised not to harm David." And David then explains that King Saul is trying to use and manipulate Jonathan. David creates a plan to be publicly absent from the king's meal where he is expected to attend, using it as a test of King Saul's sincerity. 1 Samuel 27 says, "If he says good, it will be well with your servant. But if he is angry, then know that evil has been determined by him." and as a show of friendship, they exchange promises for each other. Jonathan promises to deceive his father, and David promises to honor Jonathan when he becomes king. In 1 Samuel 20, 13 through 15, it says, or Jonathan says, "May the Lord be with you as he has been with my father. If I am still alive, show me the faithful love of the Lord. But if I die, never cut off the faithful love of my house, even if the Lord were to cut off every one of the enemies of David from the face of the earth." And we will hear later of the story of a man named Mephibosheth, and that will come into play with us, but that's getting way ahead of ourselves here. Since Jonathan cannot speak directly to David for fear of King Saul's men capturing his friend, Jonathan proposes to shoot 3 arrows as an indication. It says in 1 Samuel 20, 21 through 22, "If I say to the boy, 'Look, the arrows are on this side of you, collect them, and then you are to come, for as the Lord lives, it is safe for you and there is no danger.' But if I say to the young man, 'Look, the arrows are beyond you,' then go, for the Lord has sent you away." Jonathan goes to confront King Saul and goes to the feast. And after a period of 2 days of absence of David, Saul, is suspicious and asks Jonathan what is up. Jonathan tells him what what David told him to say, and King Saul sees through it. He becomes very angry and, in fact, throws a spear at him, so that Jonathan knew that the decision of his father to put David to death was confirmed. His father then publicly disgraces him and treats him as an enemy, and Jonathan leaves his father upset. Jonathan goes to David and shoots arrows to indicate that it is unsafe for David, then sends the boy away with his bow. It is now time for good friends to say goodbye. In 1 Samuel 20, 41 through 42, "As soon as the boy had gone, David rose from beside the stone heap and prostrated himself with his face to the ground. He bowed 3 times, and they kissed each other and wept with each other, but David wept the more. Then Jonathan said to David, 'Go in peace, since both of us have sworn in the name of the Lord, saying, "The Lord shall be between me and you, and between my descendants and your descendants forever." And he got up and left, and Jonathan went into the city. This is the last time those good friends will see one another, so it is a sad time of friendship. But now we get to focus more on enemies. In 1 Samuel 21, we see David, the enemy pronounced of Saul, travels away to Nob and meets the priest Ahimelech. The Bible briefly mentions a man named Doeg, the Edomite, and we learn that he will have an impact next time. He is actually considers himself an enemy of David. So David pretends to be on official business from the king and seeks bread to eat. Ahimelech says that there is only holy bread, aka the bread of the presence, also called the show bread, that is used in worship. And only the Levites and the priest are allowed to eat of this bread. But David is lying to a priest and also breaks a commandment by eating this bread. For as it says in Leviticus 24, verse 9, "This bread shall be for Aaron and his descendants, who shall eat them in a holy place. For they are most holy portions from him from the offerings by fire to the Lord, or perpetual due." David again is from the tribe of Judah, but he is not from the tribe of Levi and not a Levite. That is not all that David took here in the story. We see David seeks a weapon, and he is granted the sword of Goliath, the Philistine giant he slew. He takes the sword and leaves. And then David wanders into the territory, ironically, of the Philistines and pretends to have become insane in order to be avoided being killed. Thus, we see all this juxtaposition of enemies and friends not being able to be friends because of enemies and people who do harm to one another. So may you be able to live in peace. May you have many friends and no enemies. And may God bless you the ability to live safely.